I have a lot to ask you about a long life in public service, but I do want to start with just a couple questions about what's going on now. And the first one is, what lessons are you taking away from the election results?
Donald Trump won. He won overwhelmingly. He said what he was going to do, and that's what he's doing. I mean, people are saying, oh, I don't like this appointment or this policy that he's talking about. But those are the things he said he was going to do when he ran. So you can't complain about someone who does what he said he was going to do. And I agree with him on a lot of policy fronts. I disagree with him on some things. But it's like, OK, give him a chance to do what he said he's going to do and see how it works out.
This is not a traditional cabinet, the nominees. I'm sure you have some feelings. I know you're not going to be voting on them, and I know you're loath to talk about individual ones, but I'm wondering if there's a perception you have of the people he is putting into his administration, which are certainly very different than his first administration.
Well, a very famous book talked about Abraham Lincoln choosing a team of rivals. This is a team of people who are very, very different, extraordinarily different backgrounds, different perspectives on issues, in some cases, I think, even than the president. So an unusual collection of individuals, not the people I would have chosen, but I lost. He won, all right? I'd like to revisit that and win, but I didn't get that chance. And so these are the kind of people he wants to run, and he's entitled to that. Now, the Senate has a responsibility to make sure that these people are legitimate, that there's no skeleton that could be an embarrassment to them or the country, and to also determine if they're qualified for the position that they've been nominated to. And I expect them to carry out that responsibility with conscience and diligence.
Trump has made it clear that he wants to go after his political opponents. He's talking about members of the January 6th committee should go to jail. Are you worried at all about being a target for retribution, you or members of your family?
No, actually, I've been pretty clean throughout my life. I'm not particularly worried about criminal investigations. And I don't know how much, by the way, of what the president says is hyperbole, because there was a lot of this person ought to be jailed and that person ought to be jailed that was said during the last two campaigns. But I think President Trump is likely to try and focus on the future. People who committed crimes, I'm sure, will be prosecuted, but I think that's few and far between.
So let's take a look at your life. You were famously the son of George Romney, a Michigan governor, a 1968 presidential candidate, a HUD secretary. We were watching the 1964 Republican convention, as we do in our spare time here, and we came across your dad's speech. He said something interesting, kind of warning. He didn't mention Barry Goldwater, but he was kind of warning about the power of personality as opposed to the strength of character. And let's run a little bit of that.
The strongest personality on earth cannot deal with the problems of this nation except upon the basis of correct principles.
Doesn't sound all that different from some things you've been saying.
Well, I haven't seen that clip, by the way, and he obviously was a man of great energy and passion. Mm-hmm. That's what comes across to me in that clip. But also I think it's a fair warning, which is that personality is important, and character, in my view, is actually perhaps the most critical thing we choose in our leaders, whether in a state, in a university, in a church, or in a White House. Policy, bad policy, we can live with. The country's overcome bad policy in the past, and it will in the future. Bad character is something we haven't had to live with, and so it's important in our leaders of all kinds that we have people who are honest and virtuous and direct in a way that is not based upon personal interest, but is based instead on the national interest. So that's what I hope we find in the next administration. I'm, as you know, not a supporter of President Trump's. I didn't support him in this election, didn't last time he ran either, largely for matters of character, and I hope we see better in the coming years.
Let's talk about your career. When you look back on everything you have accomplished, removing your marriage and your family from it and your faith, just in terms of professional accomplishment, what are you proudest of?
Yeah, you can't remove family and faith.
Well, I'm going to get to those too, but I'm just being like, but obviously you're proud of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But just on the professional
Well,
side.
but I am a creature of, my dad that you just saw, and the values that he instilled in me, and my mom and her passion. I'm a person of deep and profound faith, and so those are importantly part of who I am and what I brought to the public sector. And my passion has been to preserve the Union, preserve freedom, and to help people in our country in doing that. So for instance, when Benjamin Franklin was reported to say, a republic, if you can keep it, my purpose has been trying to make sure that we keep it and to do the things that would allow us to keep it. And so things I'm proudest of are things that have made it more likely for America to succeed. So things that made our economy work better. When I was a governor, things that made our state work better. When I was at the Olympics, it was making sure that the character of the country was able to be demonstrated to people around the world. And then there are things that actually are more attuned to helping individuals. So our health care plan that got everybody in the state of Massachusetts insured. I'm very proud of that. Our education policies. I mean, Massachusetts ranks #1 in the nation in K through 12 education. That's in part because of policies not just I put in place, but my predecessors did. These are things I'm extraordinarily proud of. And in Washington, it was going after some of the challenges we face globally, how we stand up to China, how we support freedom fighters like those in Ukraine, those in Israel. A lot of different voices and perspectives, but keeping America strong and, if you will, preserving the republic is, in my view, the most important thing I've endeavored to do.
I don't know if you agree with this, but I've heard it said, and I understand why people say it, that sometimes you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. And I'm wondering if you think that's true, and if so, what you've learned from things that didn't go the way you wanted.
Well, I think you learn from life's experience. You learn from both your successes and your failures. I don't think you just learn from one or the other, or perhaps even one more than the other. But sure, I've had some failures. I had some campaigns that didn't work. But the funny thing is, I don't define myself by promotions or pay or actually winning elections. I define myself by whether I'm in the fight, whether I've tried to make a difference on things that matter most. The places where I failed, it's like, okay, what can I do next time to be more successful? I mean, I wish I could go back and start over again because, of course, I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. I should have been more assertive in some places, pushed harder than I did, created more energy and heat than I did, went along quietly a little longer than I probably should have. But, I'm proud for what I accomplished, but I recognize there are places I didn't get the job done. But I'm not going to lose sleep over that because I fought as hard as I knew how to do at that time, and that's the nature of life.
What's an example of someplace that you wish you had been more assertive?
Well, we have a number of challenges as a country, but we don't have a strategy to deal with China, a great power competitor, unlike anything we faced before. The Soviet Union was a competitor, but we didn't know it at the time. It was weak economically. China is strong, even potentially stronger than us down the road economically. So it's a different kind of threat. And I keep on pushing for us to develop a national strategy to confront China and to get them to be diverted towards a course of collaboration or cooperation or competition as opposed to warfare eventually. And I have a hard time getting any administration to sign on to that. It's one of the areas I feel I needed to push harder.